with the Super Bowl concluding, the only thing I can think about is Dynasty Fantasy Football, and specifically Dynasty Fantasy Football startups and Dynasty Fantasy Football trades. So today we're going through Dynasty Startup ADP over the last 10 days and how you can be using it to make better trades, and also how you should be evaluating these players where they're currently going off on the market. Now, we're using the Dynasty Data Lab to go over startup ADP. So when we look at overall first round kind of values right now, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson here in the top 3 picks, I 100% think that needs to be the direction that you need to be going on your rosters if you are in the first 3 picks of a startup. But we start to get a little bit dicey here at the 4th overall pick with Jamar Chase going at the 104 in startups over the last 10 days. Highest Jamar Chase has been in any offseason. I think it's valid. I think Jamar Chase clearly the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty Fantasy Football, but in my perspective, the wide receiver position has really started to shoot up in the sense of the top 12 to 11 guys are almost becoming more valuable than some of their quarterback counterparts. Of course, the top end QBs, like we're talking about with Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, far more valuable. But as you can see, you got Joe Burrow at the pick 5, but then Justin Jefferson pick 6, Jalen Hurts at pick 7. I think the big thing after the Super Bowl is 100%. I believe Jalen Hurts is going to go past Joe Burrow back in the Dynasty kind of landscape. I think he goes back to QB4. Brock Bowers at overall pick 8, Patrick Mahomes at pick 9. I think we're going to see Patrick Mahomes probably slide in the back end of your first round startups, but I think this is okay value. Bijan Robinson, I haven't seen Bijan Robinson in a lot of my startup mocks that I've been doing. He's been going a lot more in the early part of the second, but Data Lab is saying that he has been going in the back end of the first. Malik Neighbors and then CeeDee Lamb. I still have CeeDee Lamb ahead of Malik Neighbors, but this is kind of the first look at the last 10 days of startup ADP. Like we said, February 1st to February 10th. This video is coming out on February 11th. So interesting data. Let me know what you think of kind of this first round, what it should be looking like. I like using this though. If we're looking and talking through, Caleb, how should I be using this data? Really using this data to go find trades. Like I said, in a few leagues, I'm right now trying to trade some QBs for some wide receivers. I'm trying to trade some, figure out what some good running back values are and players around them. I like to use this to kind of figure out, hey, where maybe are some ADP gaps that I can take advantage of, because right now people are drafting these players and they're evaluating them in the startup mindset. And sometimes the keep trade cut mindset is more around team build. I just appreciate looking at kind of the data, the raw data like this. So when we go to the second round, we can see that it kind of snakes back around. So we got Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 13, Amon-Ra, Puka, and Brian Thomas Jr. back-to-back wide receivers. And I think you could make the case that Brian Thomas Jr., Puka Nacua, and Amon-Ra St. Brown should all be going ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs, all be going ahead of Bijan Robinson. I like to build my teams out not around running backs, but you do need elite level running backs to, of course, win in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I think it's an interesting strategy when we're talking kind of the value on these guys, but you got Trey McBride sliding in as the tight end 2 right there at pick 117. The 101, a lot of talk has been made about, hey, this is a weaker draft class in 2025 than in past years, but the 101 is currently sliding in at the 118. A few weeks ago, I would say almost a month ago, I traded the 101 for Brian Thomas Jr. So according to the Dynasty Startup ADP right now, looking like a win, but still to be determined as we head into draft season, how much farther the 101 is essentially going to be. Ashton Genty is going to rise. You got Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, 2 quarterbacks both still going ahead to Justin Herbert and Drake May. Personally, for me, I would be taking Drake May. I would be taking Justin Herbert ahead of CJ Stroud. I think you could maybe debate Caleb Williams a little bit, but I 100% would still be taking those 2 guys. I think Drake May, what we're going to kind of continue to see over the next few weeks, I think Drake May probably ends up being an early second round startup pick in Dynasty startups going forward. And then you got Nico Collins kind of rounding out that end of the second round. And we'll go to the third round. And the thing I want to say is right now, highly recommend if you're doing a Dynasty startup that you do a third round reversal. I think it makes it a lot more fair this offseason to do a third round reversal, especially with how dominant those top 3 quarterbacks have been and or a la like a Jamar Chase. But we move on to this third round territory and we got more wide receivers. And I think you're going to just kind of continue to see these wide receivers, even these back end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 in Dynasty rankings, continue to push up the board. We got Drake London, Marvin Harrison Jr. Drake London, absolutely a huge target getter for the Atlanta Falcons. We'll have to see what he can do with Michael Penix in a full season. I think that really excites a lot of people. Marvin Harrison Jr., can we get the bounce back? Bo Nix, Lad McConkey, Devon Achane, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Jordan Love, JSN, Kyler Murray, AJ Brown, Sam Laporta. I've been telling people to buy low on Kyler Murray. I would still have Kyler Murray ahead of Jordan Love in these rankings. Breece Hall, especially if you're in a startup, you miss out on those top 3 guys, the Gentry, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. I think even though Breece Hall, it was a disappointing year in 2024, being able to really push forward and try to get a guy that could be the RB1 overall in this next year. Breece Hall is 100% a guy that I like to be targeting. Like we said, these wide receivers, AJ Brown, he's 27. You've got probably 3 more years of elite level production. I know a lot of people are saying to buy low on AJ Brown because AJ Brown, like we said, if we can kind of put together that he gets 3 more high-end wide receiver 1 seasons, I think a lot of people are going to be happy. The one thing that I will say is a lot of doctors are worried about the knee scopes that AJ Brown got early on in his career and how that could affect the longevity, how that could affect the explosiveness, especially as we get into his later 20s. That is the only thing that I will bring up with AJ Brown, but I do think he is a pretty good buy. I still do have JSN. I still do have Garrett Wilson, Ladd, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake London all ahead of AJ Brown, but I wouldn't be surprised if, especially if you're a competitive team, getting it and adding a guy like AJ Brown, how beneficial that could be. Kyler Murray, I think we do need to be trying to hope and pray for a bounce back because that's not only going to benefit Trey McBride, who got taken around earlier, but that's also going to benefit our guy, Marvin Harrison Jr. But like I said, if you got into this point in the video, we're talking Dynasty startup, we're talking Dynasty strategy, talking these player values. I think this is what makes me the most excited is looking and seeing, hey, what trades can I be making based on what Caleb's showing me? Hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. It helps out the channel so much. And like we said, we move on to this 4th round. And this at pick 37 right here is where the 102 is coming off the board. So the early part of the 4th round. I've been watching a bunch of different Dynasty startups. I've been participating in Dynasty startups. I would say that once this ADP kind of gets adjusted for the next few days, I've seen it kind of start to cement itself in the back end of the 3rd, even middle part of the 3rd, which for a lot of people is still going to feel a lot weaker than in previous classes, but I do think this value is going to continue to climb. Then we got Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Brock Purdy, Kyron Williams, Baker Mayfield, Rashee Rice, T. Higgins, 103, Rome Odunze, Trevor Lawrence, James Cook. We got a ton of running backs here. Honestly, I love Dynasty Data Lab because it pulls in amazing data, but I'm still going to be sticking with Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, Rashee Rice, T. Higgins, Rome Odunze, the 103, all over Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams. I understand you need running backs to win Dynasty Fantasy Football Championships. Totally hear you on all of that. I just could not be doing that myself. I would prefer to take the quarterbacks and wide receivers here in this round 4. And like I said, maybe waiting till the end of round 4, early round 5 to be able to get and start to take some of these values that continue to fall. We move on here to the 5th round because even like, would you rather have Bucky Irving or Michael Penix Jr.? I understand if Michael Penix Jr. is your QB3, of course you're going to be like, hey, I want an elite level RB. But I personally like Michael Penix Jr. going forward. I like Jared Goff. I like the 104 getting and being able to trade a guy like a Jonathan Taylor for the 103 even if you really need a running back and be able to re-roll into a younger asset. I think that's something that you should be considering, especially when we're kind of taking it from the Dynasty startup, the Dynasty values that are currently out there. I think you can definitely explore. If these are how people are valuing some of these higher tier running backs, I'm 100% going to be liquidating this offseason. Then we got Josh Jacobs. JJ McCarthy, I think, is an interesting value. I love Michael Penix Jr., but if JJ was playing with Kevin O'Connell and this Minnesota Vikings offense, easy QB 19 coming off the board. Dak Prescott at QB 20, great buy. Christian McCaffrey, we just saw Saquon Barkley lead the Eagles to the promised land. Can we see CMC, a fully healthy CMC, get back to relevance? I think that's 100% interesting. 105, Bryce Young, Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, Chase Brown. I'm still taking Devontae Smith over Chris Olave, but I do think Chris Olave, I know there's a lot of risk with that injury. I don't know. Between him and Devontae Smith, it's interesting. But Chase Brown, another guy that I would be looking to sell if I own some Chase Brown there. We go to round 6, and I think I'm just continuing to look at these values, and I'm like, man, give me the wide receivers. Xavier Worthy, especially after what he just did in the Super Bowl. Zay Flowers, the 106. We got Derrick Henry, DJ Moore, Kenneth Walker, TJ Hawkinson, Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Addison, Jalen Waddle, Terry McLaurin, the 107. I think Kenneth Walker, if you compare what he did on a points per game basis versus Jonathan Taylor, and we see this almost, 2-round ADP gap between the two, I'm 100% looking at Kenneth Walker as a guy that I should be buying, especially in a running back value. I think it could be appropriate with what we're doing looking going forward. TJ Hawkinson, I like him as the tight end 4. I think the top 5 tight ends heading into this next year have definitely cemented themselves. I felt like we went into last year and we're like, oh, like there's so many dynasty tight ends that I like. I think I continue to reaffirm myself that unless you have one of the top 2 tight ends in a given year, the fall off can be pretty harsh. We saw Travis Kelce, even though it was a down year, still was okay, but we saw Trey McBride, Brock Bowers absolutely leading the charge. We'll have to see how Sam Laporte is able to bounce back. Can Dalton Kincaid ever bounce back? What happens with Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Tyler Warren as a rookie will be something to monitor. So kind of hesitating in a lot of my rosters, unless I have an elite level tight end. I'm not trying to pay up and buy one, but TJ Hawkinson I think is appropriate level value here in the 6th. I like Kenneth Walker, Derrick Henry. I mean, that's an absolutely competitive level move. I think the hard discussion when we see that he's going right next to the 106 is, are you taking Derrick Henry or are you taking the 106? I personally would still be taking the 106, but I guess maybe I don't like to win Dynasty Fantasy Football Championships. That's something to consider. Jalen Waddle, especially with Tyreek Hill potentially moving on over the next few seasons, that's an interesting buy here in round 6. And then Jordan Addison, Terry McLaurin, and the 107. We go down to round 7, and we got Anthony Richardson off the board. And Anthony Richardson is maybe one of the most polarizing quarterbacks right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football, because if he absolutely comes out, he can show that he can be a prolific passer at the NFL level, or even just an average passer at the NFL level that can help the Colts win games while still being absolutely a mega rusher on the ground. We could be looking at Anthony Richardson, like we said, turning into Cam Newton, but we do know the Colts, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, their GM and coach, are definitely on the hot seats. So how much of a leash are they going to give Anthony Richardson? Are they going to bring in a secondary quarterback that can actually compete for the starting job? Something to kind of monitor. We got George Pickens, down year for the Steelers. We got Tyreek Hill, also another down year. Really fell off the face. We were looking at Tyreek Hill as like the wide receiver 12 in Dynasty last year, all the way down here at wide receiver 27. George Kittle, Chuba Hubbard, who just got the contract, 108, DK Metcalf, Jameson Williams, Brandon Ayuk, who a lot of people are saying is buy low, got the mega contract, just got hurt. He's going to be coming off of that. We'll have to see. Debo requested a trade. Ricky Pearsall, still very young. Brandon Ayuk could become back to being the major target earner in that San Francisco 49ers offense. The 109, Joe Mixon, and then Dalton Kincaid. Move on to round 8. We got Tyrone Tracy, Jalen McMillan, Chris Godwin, Mark Andrews, Jaden Reed, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, 111, Sam Darnold, 110, Jerry Jeudy, and then Mike Evans. The thing that we need to understand about this kind of range of players is this is really where, if you built a more competitive team or even a younger competitive team early on, you can really start to take advantage of some of these ADPs later. Like I said, if you're really competing going into next year, getting a Mike Evans, getting a Chris Godwin, getting a Mark Andrews if you need some tight end help just feels very, very appealing. And even getting a running back like an Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, one of these older guys, like I prefer those guys over Tyrone Tracy. We don't know what's going to happen to Tyrone Tracy in the draft. I guess we don't know if the Saints are going to take a running back to kind of compete with Alvin Kamara. We 100% know it's the David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs show. Jahmyr Gibbs will probably get more and be closer to that 68 to 70% snap share mark, where David Montgomery will probably still be sliding in around that 35 to 36. But if David Montgomery can still be that touchdown hog, touchdown machine, I think there's a lot of positivity there for a guy like David Montgomery. And then we move down here to round 10 and the 112. This is what's crazy to me. Like if we start talking through some of these late first overall values, like would you rather have the 112 or would you rather have Kyle Pitts? Would you rather have the 112 or would you rather have Travis Etienne? Even like the 201 is currently going ahead of Travis Etienne. I understand it wasn't a good year, but we got Liam Cohen coming into the building, hopefully going to help Travis Etienne get back to relevance. Like, I'd rather, if someone offered me Tyrone Tracy for Travis Etienne, I wouldn't even take that. Like, I prefer Travis Etienne over Tyrone Tracy. So if you own one of these back in first, especially when we're talking through some of these overall startup ADP values, I'm 100% valuing Travis Etienne over the 112, Kyle Pitts over the 112, even Ricky Pearsall over the 112, Josh Downs over the 112, Tucker Kraft, holy crap. Like, I got a ton of Tucker Kraft shares, and it's crazy that he's right here at the 201. I think people aren't valuing him that way, so I think he's definitely somebody that if you need some tight end help, like I said, I don't love to buy elite level tight ends, but if Tucker Kraft, tight end 10, I've seen rankings out there of him, of people love him as their tight end 6. I love some Tucker Kraft too. I'm not taking him above Kyle Pitts or David Njoku, but I do think you can get him cheaper than those two guys. Keon Coleman, year 2 with Josh Allen, what's that going to look like? The 202, and then Cortland Sutton. And let's round this out here with round 10. We got Travis Kelce, Trey Benson, Zach Charbonnet, the 204. And I'm reading this backwards. So we have Michael Pittman Jr., Justin Fields, 203, Khalil Shakir, DeAndre Swift, Devontae Adams, James Conner, Brian Robinson, the 204, Zach Charbonnet, Trey Benson, Travis Kelce. I mean, round 10 of your startups is kind of like where the competitive teams are going to be able to get assets. Like a Devontae Adams could definitely help you next year. Travis Kelce, for as bad as he was, if you're playing any tight end premium or even just need a tight end for one more year, it's not vintage Kelce, but it's still good enough. It's like Tony Gonzalez in his last year. Probably still going to feel good enough starting him at your tight end spot each and every week. DeAndre Swift, we'll have to see if the Bears bring in anybody. James Conner with Trey Benson. Trey Benson and James Conner in the same round is interesting, but I think you can kind of take your team two different directions. And we kind of just continue to go like Deebo Samuel and Tony Pollard are all the way down here, which is absolutely crazy when we start to look at round 11 here with Isaiah Likely, Geno Smith, John O. Smith, Matthew Stafford, Ramondre Stevenson, Jake Ferguson, the 205, Najee Harris, Cooper Kupp, Deebo, Xavier Legette, Tony Pollard. So I guess what I'm trying to say, and this is kind of what the data has been telling me, when we're talking through these overall players, we really need to consider the overall values that we're starting to see kind of on this chart when it comes to just being able to better depict and better pick out players. Because like we were saying, like the first round, the second round, the third round, and the fourth round, if you stay flexible, I think there's a lot of competitive options that you can end up getting at the end of your dynasty starts when we're talking the round 9s, round 10, the round 11s, that if you don't know this ADPs or you don't know where they're currently going in values, you might miss out. And right now, sleepers ADP is 100% messed up. So if you are trying to figure out, hey, I'm doing dynasty startup soon, a paid money league, and I don't have the money to go in and out and invest in somebody's Patreon or someone's dynasty startup rankings, 100% come over to Dynasty Daily Lab. It's free. It helps you. I've used it a ton just to bounce off even my own rankings to figure out exactly who I'm valuing and how the market's valuing that. I mean, you can use Keep Trade Cut and those overall rankings, but I think this definitely helps you a bunch. So if you like Dynasty Fantasy Football, if you like winning, hit that like and subscribe button. Appreciate you guys so much. All the support. More Dynasty videos on the way, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.